Joining us, old friend of the show, David Pakman, liberal host of the internationally syndicated radio and TV program, The David Pakman Show. David, good to have you back.
Thank you.
Listen, the Congressional Budget Office, as we were just talking about, also reported that the debt will be exceeding our economy by year's end, the entire size. The Congressional Budget Office report shows the debt exceeding the size of our economy by the year's end. It also shows that Social Security will come up short by $45 billion this year. Do you think these realities that just came on the heels of the State of the Union address to some degree undercuts the president's call for more spending? How are we going to handle this?
Tell me exactly what you mean by more spending.
Well, he uses the word investment, and there are a lot of projects in which he still wishes to invest, meaning spend. Now, let's assume that all the things he wants to do are perfectly laudable. Do they make sense at a time when we just don't have cash?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, I think there are things we need to cut. There are things we need to keep putting money into. I've been talking for a while now, certainly for months, probably even over a year at this point, that I think we actually need to scale down defense spending. And when I say that, I don't mean $78 billion because we're going to be doing less wars in other countries. I mean actual base closures and really reducing that a huge part of the economy versus the 12 or 13% that is being discussed, that portion of the economy where we're going to start chipping away with the endowment for the arts and, as you and I spoke about recently, Amtrak.
Well, the endowment for the arts, all these things, perfectly laudable. Some great works are byproducts of them. But in this age of economic triage that has befallen us, we're having to make choices. So couldn't it be argued that perhaps maybe allocating the funds that used to go for the National Endowment for the Arts or even a Corporation for Public Broadcasting would be better suited to perhaps, further buttress our food stamp program?
No, I mean, I think the argument could be made that any one program should be redirected, the funds should be redirected to any other program. My point is that we're already, when I say we, I mean the United States, even though I wasn't born here, I'm a citizen now, we're falling behind in science and math in schools. We're falling behind in alternative energy development. We've been embarrassingly behind in high-speed rail and trains. What I'm saying is the drops in the bucket that eliminating some of these programs would be is nothing to having a real discussion about, do we need 50 bases in Germany? What about maybe 40? 40 bases is still plenty, isn't it?
Well, how about we just acknowledge that nothing should be sacrosanct? How about nothing be sacrosanct? Not only defense, but also infrastructure projects, entitlements, corporate welfare, size of the federal payroll, Medicare, unemployment benefits, earmark projects. And by the way, do you think it really made sense for Obama to say on one hand at the State of the Union address that he would veto any bill that included earmarks, and then on the other have Senate Majority Leader Harry Reid say, that's not going to happen, he knows how I feel about this?
Yeah, in my national column that I wrote literally within an hour of the speech, one of my main complaints was the living in a fantasy world I mentioned in a previous conversation, saying he's going to veto anything with earmarks is not realistic. Republicans have said it. We heard it from Rand Paul, and then he said, well, actually, if everybody's taking earmarks, I'll take them too for Kentucky. That was a low light for me from the speech, absolutely.
What about the in my estimation, shameless ignoring of Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac? Why is it you think this president didn't recognize in his State of the Union speech just how culpable are Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac when it comes to our economic meltdown? Now, these two government-sponsored enterprises really were encouraged by the government with their perceived federal banking to raise funds at pretty sweet rates.
I wondered about...
And then they gamble those borrowings to line the pockets of their private shareholders. When do we hold them responsible? Additionally, they were the ones who enabled the banks to write all that bad mortgage paper, now choking our economy. So when do Democrats admit that their leaders like Barney Frank, Maxine Waters, Gregory Meeks, Arthur Davis, Lacey Clay were caught on video in late 2004 actually defending Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac from the regulation that actually Republicans were then trying to implement because of the very things that we all now understand to be true? What is so bad about spanking Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac?
In the last couple of minutes we have left, there's no way I could even begin to address each one of the premises of your very long question. But what I agree with you on is this. I also don't understand why some things were not mentioned or barely mentioned in the speech. When Barack Obama brought up the repeal of Don't Ask, Don't Tell once in the context of saying military recruiters should be embraced by all colleges, even before the repeal has been enacted, I don't know why and what they talk about behind the scenes when they decide what will and won't be a part of the speech.
Well, hold it. No, I got to stop you there. It is so cerebrally maladroit and intellectually abridged for people to ever believe that the college campuses had a right to reject the military. And I say this as somebody who, unlike Barack Obama, is pro-gay marriage. Yes, people who like to comment on our little YouTubes when David Pakman and I get together, I'm pro-choice, pro-gay rights, pro-gay marriage, pro-social safety nets. Hell, I'm even pro-reparations for blacks. I just, at the same time, agree with the Republicans in that I'm for smaller government, lower taxes, originalist judges, supported the war against Iraq as well as the war against fanatical jihadists. But it is disingenuous to blame the military and punish them for something Congress enacted. Don't Ask, Don't Tell was a product of Congress, not the military. So why tell the military they can't come on college campuses that, by the way, more often than not, are accepting federal dollars? Thank you very much.
Yeah, I'm not a lawyer, so I don't pretend to know whether it is legal or illegal for colleges to say to military recruiters, we don't want you here. It's
just morally wrong to blame the military for that which Congress passed. How can you disagree with me on that?
It is wrong to blame the military for something that Congress passed. I agree with you on that. That is a separate issue from whether it is legal or whether I like the idea of military recruiters at high school and colleges. But you're right, you can't blame the wrong party.
And that was the only measure of whether or not the college campuses could be seen as reasonable in the actions they had taken thus far. Other thing, though, is, by the way, we don't have so little time available. We actually got some minutes. So the exposition that I gave about Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac is something to which you can still respond. Does it make sense to keep shielding these folks? They were not included in the financial reform bill that the president and his party like to brag about so often. They were not included. And people are thinking, well, maybe it's because they were disproportionately donating to campaigns on the Democratic side versus the Republican side. They would not include any mandated changes to Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac when it came to that financial reform bill. Do you think that was advisable?
No, listen, I am for transparency and exposing corruption and exposing, quid pro quos in any case. And I believe that while I haven't looked into in detail in the last 48 hours why exactly did Barack Obama not talk about that, it should be discussed. There's a number of reasons. I would not rule anything out at this point as to why it didn't come up.
Also, here's another question. When the president called for investments in programs, why wouldn't he admit that investment is really just another word for spending? Why don't they just say spending? Why does they keep using – this is like the art of movable standards, when you rename a thing as being something other than what it is in order to gain the ground your arguments otherwise could not. Why don't they man up and woman up and say, hey, we're going to spend dollars on these things and stop calling them investments?
I disagree. Here we can very, very much disagree. Military spending and much of defense spending is not an investment. In other words, you make guns and bullets that are used once and thrown away and then have to be made again.
I was in the military. Trust me, a lot of the equipment, the vast majority of it, actually is used over and over and over again. I was off the coast of Iran during the hostage crisis during the Carter administration. Trust me, 99.999% of the stuff we used over and over and over again. And, oh, by the way, the military is the largest school on the planet, and we get a lot for our dollars from what the military puts forward. You look at NASA and everything we got from there. Trust me, the military, we get it twofold. But go ahead.
I don't question your credentials, but when a lot of those things that are manufactured, even though they can be used over and over again, they are replaced, and a lot of them when a country is not using them all at war. But again, we're getting into details. But my point is, I believe there is a difference between spending and investment, and I believe there are times when the term investment does make sense. Now, we're going to disagree on some of Obama's proposals about whether they really are an investment in the future, to use his term, or not. That's a disagreement I can't imagine you and I can get past.
How about this? When we look at the president right now, we're looking at a guy who's got a lot of turbulent times ahead of him. What areas of compromise do you think he can get away with the Republicans without evoking the wrath of the far left? Not a lot of time, just one or two things you think very quickly.
I think overall, keeping taxes low in areas where it makes sense is something he will get buy-in from Republicans.
And I guess we lost David Pakman there. All right, folks, lost David Pakman. Sorry about that. Anyway, we're going to have him back more often. Not to worry. Stick with us, folks. You are with Battleline, Main Street Radio Network. I'm Alan Nathan. I'm Alan Nathan. I'm Alan Nathan.